I'm Christopher Lee. Join me for 100 years of horror. The blood is the life, as it says in Scripture. This metaphor exists in many ways, symbolic and in reality.
When taking Holy Communion in the Catholic Church, for example, one metaphorically drinks the blood of Christ and eats of his flesh to absorb his spirit. Other ancient cultures, some of which still exist, take this a bit more literally.
Looming over our modern concept of vampirism is the shadow of the most famous arch-vampire, the creation of Bram Stoker in his 1897 novel, Dracula. Stoker based his creation partially on the historic nobleman known as Vlad V, Dracula, Vlad Cepes in his native tongue, Vlad the Impaler, a prince of Wallachia and Moldavia, areas which border on Transylvania. Yes, there really is such a place. I know. I've been there to see the ruins of his castle and the monasteries that he endowed. The things that Dracula did in life were unspeakable. But the character of Count Dracula was not wholly based on Vlad Cepes. Some suggest that the physical description and the lofty, arrogant attitude were unconscious caricature of Sir Henry Irving, a noted Shakespearean actor for whom Stoker worked as a manager for almost 30 years. Irving was noted for villainous and melodramatic roles like Richard III. The role of Dracula would have been perfect for him. In fact, a reading of the story was staged at Irving's West End Theatre, the Lyceum. According to legend, Irving's opinion was a one-word comment, echoing throughout the Lyceum Theatre. Dreadful.
Having no interest in her husband's work during his lifetime, Mrs. Bram Stoker actively defended it after his death. It was now her only source of income. Nosferatu was an infringement of copyright. After years of wrangling, the Prana Film Company was ordered to destroy all copies of the motion picture. As you see, the order was never completely carried out. Since dubbing was technically unfeasible in the early days of talking pictures, many films were shot in alternate languages. The Spanish version of Dracula used the same sets and even some long shots of Lugosi.
The Spanish version that was shot at exactly the same time, you know, with essentially the same script, it turns into parody. So one sees by comparing those two films how much Lugosi really brought to the role. And you get a lot of points for being first.
Saca lo que llevas ahí y ponlo en esta caja. ¡Ah! ¡Ah!
Unseen for many years, this recently rediscovered film in many ways is cinematically superior to the Todd Browning version. Universal claimed the copyright of Dracula, but they did not have a copyright on Bela Lugosi, his black cape, or combinations thereof.
Let no one leave. No one let your patter.
He had always been Bela to me. And yet when we were working on Mark the Vampire, I always called him Mr. Lugosi. Lillian would come every day to pick him up because he never drove. He would give me a ride home. But always I sat in the back of the car, and I was just sort of a youngster tagging along. It was completely different. He'd moved into another area, so had I.
Scourge of mankind, they shall be found.
The new Dracula cleverly disguised himself by spelling his name backward, Count Alucard. Luckily for him, none of the characters in the story was dyslexic.
Son of Dracula is probably one of my favorites, not just because Lon Chaney was in it, because he probably admittedly wasn't a great Dracula. He looked a little too well fed. But he certainly seemed to, it was sort of almost an anticipation of later Draculas where they would become very powerful physically.
The vampire can assume very many different forms at will. Sometimes it appears as a bat, and sometimes as a small cloud of swirling vapor. In this way, it can move unseen among its enemies.
The scene where he throws the guy through the door, it was a beautifully shot thing because it's inside the room's completely black, and all of a sudden the guy coming through the door makes the doorway. I think the scene where his coffin is on fire and it's laying right by a creek full of water. So does he throw the coffin into the water to put the fire out? No, he beats it with a board. He tries to beat the fire out with a wooden board, which at that point I figured he'd probably deserve to die.
Universal had great success combining Frankenstein and the Wolfman. Columbia Pictures emulated this by combining a vampire with a werewolf. Screenwriter Griffin Jay dubbed this strange Romanian scientist Armand Tesla. A vampire by any other name struck Universal as suspiciously familiar.
Tonight, I will take Nikki away. Her soul will wander through the night, and you will never find where her body rests.
He's a very nice man. He always stank of sulfur because he drank Hungarian sulfur water, and that's a rather heady smell. So that put me off him, but he was a very nice man.
That wasn't a man. That was a wolf.
House of Frankenstein was envisioned as a monster rally, with Bela Lugosi recreating his character. At the last minute, for reasons of time and money, the studio substituted Shakespearean actor John Carradine.
When they first asked me to play Dracula, I said, I'll play him if you let me make him up the way Bram Stoker describes him. And we compromised. I wore a neatly trimmed mustache and gray hair, but you have a still here when I did on the stage. He's quite an old man with a big, bushy, drooping mustache. And that's the way Stoker described him. And I did the first ones I did were for Universal when I first started playing Dracula.
I think they're after Dracula.
The Bela had been doing it, and then Bela was getting too old for it. And they handed it to me, and I did it 3 times for Universal. And I did it twice in Mexico City, and once in Manila.
Carradine reprised the role the next year.
I am Count Dracula. You see before you a man who lived for centuries, kept alive by the blood of innocent people.
In later years, Carradine lapsed into self-parody.
Your bullets can't hurt me.
Lugosi portrayed a character with many of the same sinister attributes of the Count in his only colour feature, made in 1946, but unreleased for a year.
My little guardian of the doorbell. If you had waited another second, Inigo and I should have kicked the door in.
Yes, sir.
Sir, there is an air of inquiry about you that immediately offends my deepest nature. There is something suggesting Scotland Yard, the French Sûreté, the Italian Carabinieri, the Turkish Police, and other minions of the law. In short, sir, I think you're a cop.
Yeah, how'd you know?
I remember very well being on the set of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, with Bud Abbott and Lou Costello doing their cut-ups.
Count Dracula sleeps in this coffin, but rises every night at sunset. Chick is right. This is awful silly stuff.
Lon Chaney Jr. and I believe Glenn Strange played the monster at that time.
Come on, take it all out.
No! Look out, Chick! Cover up! What's the matter? Cover up! Wait a minute!
That was the first time that I can remember actually being on the set. And I have very vivid memories of the antics that were going on. That was a very depressing set, like most horror sets are. And the studio had hired a couple of comedians to do cut-ups between the takes, just to keep the spirits and atmosphere up.
How careless. One should be careful. A person could get killed that way. So, we meet again, Count Dracula. Dracula?
Yes, that's who he said you are.
My costume, perhaps. That's half a picture of the real thing.
Yes, right on McDougal's House of Horrors.
What an odd hallucination. But... horrible.
One last time, Lugosi donned his black cape for some test footage eventually edited into the dismal, low-budget film Plan 9 from Outer Space. He died in 1956. At his own request, he was buried in the black cape of Count Dracula.
The undead are my allies. The night is my domain. And the dark, dank tomb my dwelling place. I feast on human blood. May be yours, so beware.
A low-budget film brought the Count to America. Producers hired a Czechoslovakian emigre who, like Lugosi, had played both villains and romantic leads.
Frankly, if they had told me which kind of a picture that was, I wouldn't have, because until then I played all kinds of good people and so, but they didn't have the script. And they said, oh, we are going to write the script according to the shooting schedule. And so I did this picture, which I regretted to have been a kind of a heavy.
I bring you death, a living death. One drop of your blood and you're bound to me.
In the wake of the success of Curse of Frankenstein, Hammer Films of England did the obvious, revived the Count.
Please try and understand.
This is not Lucy, the sister you loved. It's only a shell, possessed and corrupted by the evil of Dracula.
As my dear friend Christopher Lee plays the character of Dracula, the women are very much attracted to him. I mean, that first picture, you had the lady opening her French windows, didn't you, lying back and waiting for her lover to come.
I regarded this character as heroic, romantic, erotic. Irresistible to women, unstoppable by men.
I just wanted to humanize him a bit more. I thought the more human he became, the less magic or fantasy figure he became, the more threatening he was. We're all frightened. Everybody's frightened of little ghosts and things like that, but it's the real people that are the most threatening.
I decided to play him as a malevolent hero. I decided to play him as a man of immense dignity, immense strength, immense power, immense brain. Because it's all there. He's a kind of a Superman, actually. If you read the book, it's all there.
Very tall, very aristocratic, beautiful operatic voice, excellent golfer, and the best Dracula that could ever have been. I think he is the epitome of Dracula.
There is a girl.
Maria?
Bring her to me.
During the hours of darkness, she must never be left alone.
Bring her to me!
For somebody who loved making films, as I do, it was great. But in retrospect, I wish I hadn't done it, because it got me pigeonholed. And once you're a success in the Pacific sort of movie, you're pigeonholed there. Nobody wants you to go outside it.
It wasn't a new ingredient. I mean, it's definitely been there. If you look at Nosferatu, and I mean, even in the strangest forms of these films, there's a strong sexual element. But in the colour, again, the blood became a little more gory, the sex became a little more cleavage, and the whole thing grew up a little. I'm not saying that it necessarily makes for a better picture to have those ingredients, because you're fighting the believability factor.
When Christopher Lee has to pick up the girl and carry her from one room to another, or whatever, he said to me, well, I can carry her, but how am I going to open the door? And I said, Count Dracula doesn't open doors. The door opens for him. He goes through and the door closes behind him. They've got them all in the supermarkets now, exactly the same thing.
Seeing Chris Lee dressed as Dracula is quite awe-inspiring, because you don't have to act much, because he is very frightening when he has all his gear on. And he's very tall, so he looks wonderful. You know, he really, really does. But that was the first time, I think, in my short career at that time, that I realized that I actually did want to act. This was really it, because I believed in what I was doing. At that moment, I was being bitten by Dracula, and I believed it. So hopefully the audience did.
My revenge has spread over centuries and has just begun!
Peter Cushing brought fierce intelligence and athletic determination to the role of the Vampire Slayer.
Never make our films with tongue-in-cheek. We enjoy doing them, but it's very serious, and people always laugh. As long as they enjoy themselves, we never mind.
Neither the budget nor my sense of the character allowed the original climax. Van Helsing conjuring a horde of bats to destroy the depraved Baron. But a jolly good fight and a splash of holy water and a burning windmill provided a fine alternative.
A Broadway revival of the stage version, played for camp comedy, brought Frank Langella some notoriety. Of course, a movie version was not far behind.
And Dracula himself now has become a sort of cuddly caricature in Coppola's picture, because there are so many wonderful effects, so much visual imagery, that we really haven't got time to concentrate on the story. So I think he's had problems in that with the new techniques, and as techniques were available to us, there's a tremendous tendency to forget the story you're telling and get lost in the new techniques.
I am Dracula.
Doesn't Dracula ever end for you? I don't know whether I shall brag or complain about it, but Dracula is the only picture in existence in all the world which, since it is revived, since it is made in 31, it is the only picture which is revived in every city in America every year.
Well, you know, some people, Bello, would consider that a curse, and some would consider it a very good omen, because probably as a result of Dracula,
I make a living.
Dracula has never been out of print since it was first published in 1897. The character has appeared in more films than any other in the history of horror films. Even the Francis Ford Coppola version, with sumptuous costumes and brilliant imagery, will not be the last word. Whatever wooden stakes or silver crucifixes we thrust in his direction, he will return. The character and the story are immortal. Dracula's words to his pursuers in the Bram Stoker novel, "My revenge has just begun. I spread it over centuries, and time is on my side."